And we are back. Welcome back to another week of Premier League predictions after a week where Everton had their points reduction reduced to 6. A week which saw Manchester United and Liverpool set up a mouth-watering FA Cup quarter-final. And after a week where Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne put the rest of the Premier League on alert with that incredible performance against Luton Town, we move into what could be an incredibly pivotal week in determining the future of basically the entirety of the Premier League table. I think if the fixtures go the way that I'm going to predict them today, you're going to see a very clear picture of how the top, middle and bottom of the table is going to look. So before we get into it, as always, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video if you do enjoy my prediction series, and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. We, of course, have another European week coming up for you in the next coming days. We will have predictions videos for them as well. And let's get straight in to all of Game Week 27. And we start off with the early kickoff on Saturday, as we always do this week. It is taking place between Brentford and Chelsea. Now, obviously, Chelsea have had a very, very mixed week with that bottle job comment from Gary Neville in the Carabao Cup final, resulting in a 1-0 defeat in extra time. And then backed it up with a struggled performance, shall we say, against Leeds in the FA Cup. As I predicted, I went for a draw in that game. It ended up being a very narrow 3-2 win for Chelsea, but they did look a little bit better in those performances. So we'll see. Brentford obviously playing very well at the moment. Both their strikers, Mopé and Ivan Toney, have both been scoring a lot of goals recently. And I think with the way Chelsea have been defending, I think there are going to be definite goals available for Brentford in this one. But at the same time, you've got to look at the fact that they did concede 4 goals to West Ham and say that they're going to be goals available for Chelsea as well. So with all of that said, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw to kick off this weekend's Premier League action. Don't think I need to say too much more about that. On to the 3 o'clock kickoffs then. We start off with Everton taking on West Ham. Two sides that we've already mentioned so far in this video. Everton, of course, off the back of that points reduction, now feeling a little bit more safe, a little bit more confident, and who knows, it could be the sort of thing that re-galvanises them. Obviously, that big points deduction galvanised the team and caused them to go on a bit of a run. But in the last few weeks, they have really petered out. West Ham, on the other hand, have been playing very poorly, but as I predicted, the moment that Lucas Paqueta comes back, West Ham's performances would turn around, and lo and behold, his first game back, they win 4-2 against Brentford. Now, what I'm going to do with all that information is say that as long as Paqueta stays fit, I think against teams like Everton, West Ham are going to keep winning, so I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to West Ham. That then brings us on to Fulham and Brighton. Now, Fulham, of course, with that very good win at Old Trafford, and deservedly so, as we spoke about last week, over Manchester United, coming up against the Brighton side that, again, just have not been at their best recently. 1-0 defeat to Wolves in the Cup the other day, a really poor showing from them. They seem to be really struggling without João Pedro available, and now looks like Mitoma is going to be out for the rest of the season as well. So goals sort of have dried up a little bit for Brighton over the last few weeks, and if Fulham continue to keep playing the way that they've played recently, if Muniz continues to show the sort of form that I think he can show, I think he looks like a very good striker for Fulham, I think they can capitalise again this weekend. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Fulham. Next up, it is Newcastle United taking on Wolves. Again, two sides that aren't quite hitting the heights we'd expect from them. Now, obviously, I did just say that Wolves beat Brighton 1-0. 2 consecutive 1-0 wins for Wolves at home against sides that you would expect them to beat, arguably a little bit more comfortably. So, travelling to St James's Park, I think it's going to be a tough game for them. Newcastle, on the other hand, though, again, really not playing well, especially defensively. We spoke about it last week. I said that it'd be a very tough game for them to go to Arsenal and get a result, and it's turned out to be the case. So they got absolutely dominated, and if it wasn't for a really good goal from Alexander Isak, it would have been an even more convincing victory for Arsenal. I do think, though, back at home, with the players starting to be a little bit more fit, yes, it did take penalties for them to win away at Blackburn. I just think, excuse me, this will be a result that they are going to be targeting as a win, and I think they're going to get it. I'm going to go for 3-1. That's as much taking into account Wolves' poor performances the last couple of games as well, although they have been very good defensively. So we'll see. I'm going for 3-1 to Newcastle. Next up, it is Nottingham Forest taking on Liverpool, the Carabao Cup winners, the FA Cup quarter-finalists, and all round looking for quadruple candidates being the league leaders as well. Nottingham Forest, again, a side that are playing well. You could argue they were a little unlucky not to get something out of the game against Manchester United in the FA Cup the other day. They are attacking relatively well at the moment, but defensively they still look a little bit dodgy. Liverpool, of course, with their young guns absolutely firing, should have Mo Salah and Darwin Núñez back available for this one as well. So no one's going to be surprised that I go for a Liverpool win in this one. But I am going to give Nottingham Forest 2 goals. I'm going to go for a 3-2 win for Liverpool. I still think defensively Liverpool do look a little bit shaky at times. Granted, they have just had back-to-back clean sheets. I don't know. I just have a little feeling Forest, especially at home, may get themselves a couple of goals in this one. But ultimately, I still expect Liverpool to win. The final 3 o'clock kickoff sees Tottenham taking on Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace with a very good start under their new manager, taking on a Tottenham side that, again, aren't quite firing on all cylinders at the moment. And who knows, if Palace keep this new manager pomp going, they might just go to Spurs and get a result here. I'm not confident enough to go out and say that as things stand right now. Obviously, if they do get a result against Spurs, we'll see what happens when they come up against another big team anytime soon. But for now, I'm just going to go for a narrow 2-1 win to Tottenham. The evening game on Saturday sees Luton Town taking on Aston Villa. Now, obviously, Luton, off the back of that 6-2 defeat to Manchester City, have the task of now hosting Aston Villa, a very good side on their day as well. So it's an interesting one. Obviously, the FA Cup game was a bit of a free hit for Luton, and everyone's been talking about their naivety going into it, but they've sort of tried to impose a style of play in these last few weeks. We obviously knew that they were going to have these tough games, a run of games against Manchester United, Liverpool, Man City, and now Aston Villa. So it was always going to be difficult for them to get any sort of results from them. But they've gone into it with the approach of, we're not going to be afraid. We're going to try and match these teams up. And it's not quite worked out for them. So again, unfortunately, I just don't see them having enough to beat Aston Villa. Yes, Aston Villa's away record isn't great. And as a Manchester United fan that wants Manchester United to catch Aston Villa, and as a partial Luton fan that wants Luton to beat Aston Villa to try and keep their survival hopes alive, I would obviously love to see Luton win this game. I just don't see it happening. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Villa. I can see it being a narrow affair, but I don't know. I just think at the moment, Luton defensively are leaving themselves a little bit too vulnerable. And with the likes of Leon Bailey and Ollie Watkins in the form that they're in, I can see them capitalising once again. On to Sunday, we start off with Burnley taking on Bournemouth. I don't really have too much to say about this. Burnley at the moment just don't look like a threat to any team. They're obviously now going to have Brownhill suspended as well, their most important player. Bournemouth seem to have bounced back from their little slump that they had, playing very good. Unlucky not to get a result against City at the weekend. Arguably a little bit unlucky in the FA Cup in midweek as well. It was a wonderful goal from Leicester's young teenager to see them get knocked out. And I just think Bournemouth are better than Burnley. And I'm going to go for 2-0 to Bournemouth. And like I say, I don't think I need to say much more about that. That then brings us on to the game that I don't want to spend any time talking about, which is Manchester City and Manchester United. But we have to talk about it because it's on the list. And look, I go back to what I said the other day about how we played against Nottingham Forest. It was probably the best sort of performance that side could put out. I don't think we're going to have anyone else fit and available for the game against Manchester City. They, of course, hit Luton for 6. De Bruyne looks absolutely immense at the moment. And, you know, we can talk about how Haaland scored 5 goals, but to be honest, he didn't have to work even that. He did play very well, Erling Haaland, but he didn't have to do much work for those 5 goals. De Bruyne just laid them all on a plate for him, and then obviously Bernardo for the other one. I just don't think there's any hope for Manchester United in this one. I'm going to go for a 4-0 to Manchester City. I don't think United are going to score with the attack that they've got available. I think Manchester City are going to have a field day, and genuinely, it wouldn't even surprise me if this hit double figures, if Manchester United's mentality crumbles like it can do in games like this. It was 6 goals last year. I'm going to go for 4 this year and just hope that that's how well we can end up containing a Manchester City side that looks absolutely on it at the moment. That then brings us to the Monday Night Football, and speaking of heavy defeats, there are no team that takes more heavy defeats than Sheffield United, and they are currently on course for the worst defensive record in Premier League history, and they're coming up against an Arsenal side who in their last 2 Premier League away games won 6-0 and 5-0. So I'm going to go for 5-0 to Arsenal again. I don't really think I need to say much more than that. Arsenal look fantastic at the moment in the Premier League. Sheffield United look an absolute mess defensively. Obviously, it would be good to see Sheffield United get a result against Arsenal because it would just throw the whole Premier League title race into another loop. But I just don't see it happening. Arsenal take this one fairly comfortably, in my opinion. And that is going to be it for today's video. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below on what I said at the start of the video. It's going to be a very pivotal week all across the table. Obviously, if the predictions go the way I've said they would, Liverpool, Arsenal and City continue to push away. Villa and Tottenham continue to solidify their challenge for the Champions League, leaving United and Newcastle dragging behind. And obviously, the other sides at the bottom will all end up losing, which will mean that the sides at the bottom will still be a way off getting away from safety. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I will see you again on my reactions to Manchester City against Manchester United. And then, of course, my next round of predictions on Monday for the Champions League. I'll see you then.